Chapter 3, Not the Killer You Were Expecting. You're pretty amazing, mister. The Doomslayer, aka Darren Grandel, paused in his work to look over at the pony who had spoken. She was quite young, her short dark purple mane and tail contrasting nicely with her orange coat. On her flank was a cutie mark shaped like a heraldic shield, with a wing superimposed with a bolt of lightning, all done in colors of red, lavender, and purple. Darren had been working to help clear away the remains of a partially burned and collapsed house. He was a little surprised. It had been slightly over a day since he had arrived, and so far most of the ponies had been too scared to approach him, let alone speak to him directly. That the first to do so was a child seemed an anomaly. "To what are you referring, little one?" Darren asked gently, pausing in his work to regard the filly. The filly showed no fear as she responded. "Well, you were able to beat all those dragons at once. I don't think even Princess Celestia and Luna could do that." The filly's voice held a tinge of awe as she spoke, and Darren felt a faint sense of pride at her praise. "And your armor is so cool," she continued. "I wish I had an outfit like that." Darren smiled. "What is your name, little one?" he asked. The filly beamed as she replied. "My name is Scootaloo," she said proudly. Darren nodded. "And who are your two companions hiding in the bush over there?" he asked, gesturing behind Scootaloo at a large rhododendron. Before Scootaloo could reply, two more fillies emerged from the bush to stare at him in surprise. How did y'all know we was in there?" asked one, a yellow filly with a brilliant red mane and tail. Her cutie mark was the same as Scootaloo's, save for the central image being an apple superimposed with a heart. "Yeah, your back was turned the whole time," chimed in the other, this one white, with a pink and lavender mane. Who once again had the same shield-shaped cutie mark with a slightly different image, this one a 5-pointed star with a musical note in it. Darren chuckled. "I could hear you breathing, smell the shampoo in your mane. I didn't need to see you to know you were there." The two fillies looked at him skeptically. "Don't believe me? Very well, you with the red mane, you use cherry blossom scented shampoo, and use a pine scented soap. Whereas you with the pink and purple mane, use a lilac scented shampoo, with lavender scented soap, am I correct?" The three fillies' eyes widened in shock. "How did you do that?" Scootaloo asked, her eyes shining with wonder. Darren shrugged. "It's just a matter of being able to use your senses to full effect. I imagine you three could learn to do the same with a little practice." The three fillies seemed suddenly intrigued. "Really? Could y'all teach us?" asked the red-maned one, any fear she might have felt vanishing in place of eagerness. Darren thought about it for a moment. "I don't see why not, but first I need to finish helping rebuild the town, and I need to know your names." The fillies beamed, and Darren smiled. It had been a very long time since he had seen such innocent faces. "My name's Apple Bloom, this here is Sweetie Belle," the yellow-coated filly stated. "It's a pleasure to meet you, mister," Sweetie Belle said with a polite bow. "My name is Darren Grandel, and the pleasure is all mine," Darren responded with a bow of his own. The three fillies smiled up at Darren for a moment before Apple Bloom gestured at the debris he had been moving. "Do y'all need some help?" she asked. Darren smiled, and nodded. "That would be much appreciated, but be cautious, some of these beams are ready to collapse, and there are still hot coals hidden under the ash. You girls can work on gathering the smaller detritus, and pouring water on anything that yet smolders, while I shall handle the heavier lifting." The girls nodded their understanding before fanning out around the structure to work in different areas. They made an effective team. As Darren removed the large bits of charred lumber, the girls would move in pouring water over anything hot. Then the girls would remove the bits of smaller debris, as Darren started on another section. At one point he made them pause in their work to get some leather hoof coverings so they could walk in the ash without worrying about broken glass or jagged metal. As for Darren, his armor was impervious to anything as paltry as glass or errant nails, and the girls marveled as he moved giant pieces of wood and stone with no visible effort. Darren trusted the girls to be careful, but still made certain to keep all three in sight as he worked. They labored together for several hours, the girls peppering Darren with questions the whole time. "So what are you, Mr. Grandel?" Scootaloo asked. "A human, think of us as a highly evolved form of primate." "Wait, like a monkey?" Apple Bloom asked, perplexed. "In a manner of speaking, we are closest in kinship to chimpanzees, but we walk on 2 feet, have more adroit brains, and use a much greater variety of tools." "How did you get to Equestria?" Sweetie Belle inquired. "I am not entirely certain. Last time I was fortunate enough to be here, I arrived through an anomaly in the veil of spacetime." "Wait, you've been here before?" Scootaloo asked incredulously. "Once, long ago." "How did y'all beat those dragons?" Apple Bloom queried. "Strength, speed, and the judicious use of superior firepower." "Can you use magic?" Sweetie Belle wondered. "Yes, but only in a very limited manner, and not while wearing my armor." "How come?" Scootaloo asked. "This armor is powered by magic, and to function it feeds on the magic energy of its user. Thus, were I to cast a spell while wearing it, it would cease to work properly, or the spell would fail, possibly both." On and on the curious fillies went, asking Darren about every little thing, even his favorite color, green. Then Scootaloo noticed the crucible, tightly locked in place on Darren's belt. "Hey Mr. Grandel, what's that?" she asked innocently. Darren paused to consider his answer. He dared not tell the three the truth. "This is..." Darren knew it would only make the three curious if he refused to tell them anything, so he would need a plausible lie. "It is an old souvenir, from a long ago battle." "What's it made from?" "It almost looks like it's alive." Sweetie Belle asked with a shudder, as just looking at it gave her the creeps. Darren decided to feign ignorance. "I am afraid I do not know, but see here, are you girls hungry?" Darren asked, changing the subject. The girls nodded. "Then why don't we all get something to eat and drink? You girls go wash up, and I shall meet you in the town center." Seraph Twilight said they set up a tent to serve food to those aiding in the repairs. The girls nodded happily in agreement. "Sounds great, we'll meet you by the fountain in the town square," Sweetie Belle replied before she Scootaloo, and Apple Bloom ran off to wash the accumulated ash and charcoal dust from their coats. Darren smiled until they were out of sight, before sighing with relief. "Thank the Seraphim, they are only children. I must keep the crucible's purpose a secret until I see Ladies Luna and Celestia. I mustn't take any chances. A pity I cannot simply store it with my weapons, but I dare not risk its transport through the ether given its nature." Darren shook his head. There was no point in worrying about it, as long as the crucible stayed in his possession anyway. "Ah, I love open sky." Rainbow Dash commented aloud as she shot through the clouds, the wind whipping past her. Heading home from the most recent Wonderbolts performance in Philadelphia, Rainbow was looking forward to returning home and regaling her friends with tales of her exploits. Granted, before that she intended to take a nice hot bath, and a long nap to relax. Being a Wonderbolt was exciting, amazing, incredible, and fun, but it was also exhausting, not to mention hard work. Diving down past the clouds, Rainbow skimmed over the canopy of the ever-free forest. The branches of the ancient trees grew so thick, and the forest was so vast, that it was like flying over an ocean of dark green leaves. Beyond the faintly undulating surface of the Vertensee, Rainbow could see the tops of Ponyville Town Hall, Sugar Cube Corner, and of course, the crystalline castle that was home to her friend Twilight. Inhaling deeply, Rainbow let out a happy sigh. "Home at last," she exclaimed, doing a midair somersault, and putting on a burst of speed. However, as Rainbow got closer to town, she slowed slightly. There was an odd scent on the wind. It was the smell of ash and smoke, not terribly unusual in itself. Many homes in Ponyville had wood stoves. What was surprising was smelling it in the middle of summer, especially when it was at least 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Also suspicious was the fact that she could smell it so far from the town itself. Rainbow flew higher to get a better look at the town, and gasped. Even from this distance Rainbow could see that a good 30 or so buildings had been burned to the ground, and many others had sustained noticeable amounts of damage. Increasing her speed even further, Rainbow shot toward town like a bullet. Less than 5 minutes later Rainbow found herself hovering above the town square. "Rainbow Dash!" called a familiar voice. Glancing down Rainbow gave an audible sigh of relief as she saw her unofficially adopted sister Scootaloo next to Apple Bloom, and Sweetie Belle. "Scootaloo?" Rainbow called back as she landed next to the three. "Glad to see you're all right, Squirt," Rainbow commented, trying to minimize the worry in her voice, so as to show her concern without endangering her reputation as an unflappable daredevil. "What happened? Is every pony okay?" "Yep, every pony's fine," Scootaloo confirmed, and Rainbow gave a second sigh of relief. "So what did all this? It looks like a dragon declared war on Ponyville," Rainbow exclaimed as she surveyed the ruins of several buildings. "Actually," spoke a familiar if slightly strained voice. "It was 16 dragons." Rainbow turned to see Twilight standing behind her. She looked exhausted, with circles under her eyes, her mane and tail sticking out at odd angles, and her coat liberally dusted with ash. "Well, Twilight, you look awful, maybe you ought to sit down," Rainbow said, a note of concern entering her voice. Suddenly her eyes widened as she absorbed what Twilight had just told her. "Wait, did you say 16? Twilight nodded wearily. "Yes, you remember the whole Gauntlet of Fire fiasco, Rarity, Spike, and I told you about." Rainbow nodded. "Well, it turns out that Garble and his friends attempted a coup against Dragon Lord Ember. When they failed to seize power, Garble lost it, and came here to get revenge on Spike." Rainbow Dash's eyes widened in shock before swiftly narrowing in anger. "Those jerks! Where are they? I swear I'm gonna buck them into next week." She snarled, outraged at the thought of Garble attacking her home and friends over some infantile grudge. Twilight raised a hoof to forestall Rainbow's inevitable tirade. "Trust me, Rainbow, they paid for what they did, and they won't ever bother any pony ever again." Rainbow whirled around as if expecting the offending dragons to be right behind her, as she continued her righteously indignant rant. "Darn right they won't. Not after they get a taste of my patented Rainbow Wind Kick," she declared angrily. Twilight opened her mouth to begin an explanation as to how pointless her friend's threats were when she was interrupted. "Well, I for one am in no doubt that you would have taught them a fierce lesson should you have been here, m'lady," spoke a formal male voice. "You got that right?" 5 Rainbow trailed off as she saw the creature that had spoken, her bravado giving way to an acute fear. I for once in her life Rainbow was speechless as she beheld the towering figure of the doomed slayer. Fortunately, before she could panic, Twilight intervened. "Rainbow Dash, allow me to introduce Darren Grandel, the Doom Slayer. He's the one who defeated the dragons, and quite possibly saved the lives of every pony here," Twilight explained, as Darren smiled warmly, and presented a platter covered in food and drink to the still shell-shocked Rainbow Dash. "An honor to meet you, Lady Dash. Would you care for some refreshment? We were just sitting down, and I happened to bring extra." Rainbow stared at the proffered plate for a few seconds before snapping out of her stupor, immediately trying to play down her shock. "Oh, sure, sounds great. I haven't eaten with a What are you again?" she asked as if she already knew but was simply having trouble remembering the words. "A human," Darren stated with an amused smile. "Yeah, a human in a while," Rainbow stated as Darren's grin grew. "Oh, so you have encountered my kind before?" the Doom Slayer asked, as Apple Bloom, Sweetie Belle, and Scootaloo started to snicker. "Oh yeah," Rainbow replied, her tone returned to its usual confidence. "Loads of times," she declared, as she grabbed a sandwich from the platter in Darren's hand, and took a bite. Darren turned to give Twilight a knowing wink, and she had to suppress a smirk. "Well, then you must know the official human greeting," Darren stated calmly, causing Rainbow to choke on her second bite of sandwich. Yeah. Of course I do," she replied, suddenly sounding far less certain of herself. Excellent, would you care then to demonstrate it for Lady Twilight, and the fillies? I do it myself, but I have been working all day and am rather weary, Darren said with a self-depreciating smile. Rainbow swallowed nervously as she tried to come up with an excuse. Well, you know I would, but I think I strained something on the way back from Philadelphia, so. Oh, of course, I completely understand, perhaps some other time then. Darren said sympathetically, even as he gave her a wink. Rainbow nodded, surprised that the dangerous-looking creature was letting her off the hook so easily. Yeah, right, some other time. She replied gratefully. So, are you a friend of Twilight's or? I am, though it is a rather recent acquaintance, and extenuating circumstances have prevented us from talking as much as I would like. Things have changed a great deal in the last millennia, for example, the tendency for ponies to exaggerate certain things, Darren said, his tone letting Rainbow know he wasn't completely done playing the game she started. But let us talk of that later. I have not eaten equestrian cooking in ages, and I cannot wait to experience it again, Darren declared, gesturing at a group of tables that had been set up nearby, one of which was still empty. As they walked toward their destination, Darren taking the lead, Rainbow noticed they were being watched intently. She took note of the nervous looks the other ponies gave the armored biped. However, she also noticed expressions of awe, and even saw a few smiles scattered here and there. Reaching the table, Darren put down the platter he had been carrying, waiting for the others to take their seats before sitting himself. Taking a bite out of a pastry, Darren closed his eyes, smiling broadly as he let out a contented sigh. Even after all this time, still the best food I have ever had the pleasure of tasting. The group ate in silence for a time, just enjoying the beautiful sunny weather as they dined. Rainbow, however, mostly just nibbled on the remains of her sandwich, as she stared at this, so-called, Doomslayer. So, how exactly did you manage to fight off 16 dragons at once? She asked, a hint of suspicion in her voice. Darren opened his mouth to reply, but before he could utter a single syllable, Scootaloo spoke up. Isn't it amazing dash? Every pony is talking about it. Garble was gonna hurt Twilight and then bam, his head just exploded. Then this other dragon was like what? And then its head was all like bang. Splat. Then Darren tears the head off this other dragon like it was no big deal. Then another dragon tried to breathe fire on him, and Darren is just like Nui and he hits it with these glowy things that were like zat zat zat. And he walks out of the fire like no problem. Then? I think she gets the point, Scootaloo, Twilight said nervously, as she watched Rainbow's eyes widen in what she could only assume was a mix of horror and shock. But that wasn't even the coolest thing, Scootaloo said, continuing her rapid-fire description, oblivious to Twilight's discomfort, and Rainbow's reaction. See a bunch of the dragons start flying away, and Darren just pulls this huge weapon out of nowhere, and it takes them all out in one shot. Isn't that awesome? Rainbow turned to Twilight, her expression unreadable. Is that true? She asked, her tone dead serious. Well, yes, but Rainbow, he didn't have a choice. Garble was completely insane, and that is awesome. Twilight's face did a few contortions before settling on disbelief. What? She deadpanned. That must have been the most epic fight in the history of forever. I wish I could have been here to see it. Twilight felt her eyes start twitching as she clenched her jaw. However, before she could say anything, Darren interrupted with a raised hand. Lady Dash, as much as I am flattered by your appreciation for my skill in battle, I urge you to consider that not every pony shares your point of view. Lady Twilight came within a hairsbreadth of death, a traumatic experience for any pony, and she was not the only one. Many ponies in town came close to meeting their end, and more than a few lost their homes and livelihood. Before speaking of the glory of battle, spare a thought for those who paid the price for that glory, he said evenly. Twilight stared in shock at Darren, unable to believe what she just heard him say. It was eloquent, honest, and the last thing in Equestria she expected to hear from someone who went by the title, Doomslayer. Instantly Twilight found herself reevaluating all the assumptions she had made about Darren. She knew he was polite, and well-spoken, but this was almost like something Celestia would say. Twilight thought to herself. Rainbow seemed to deflate as she processed the Doomslayer's words. I hadn't thought about it like that, she said quietly. Me neither, Scootaloo said sadly. I understand, I am certain neither of you meant any harm with your words, however, an apology would be wise. Darren replied sympathetically. Rainbow and Scootaloo nodded their understanding, while Twilight mentally shredded the personality profile she had built for Darren in her head. I'm sorry Everpony, I was being a total jerk, Rainbow said, addressing both Twilight and the nearby tables that overheard the conversation. Me too, sorry for being so thoughtless. Scootaloo chimed in. Darren nodded his approval. Well, now that that's settled, I really must take my leave, and return to work, he stated as he gathered up the various dirty dishes and replaced them on the serving tray. After he finished clearing the table, Darren turned to regard each of them in turn. It was lovely to make your acquaintance, Lady Dash, Milady Twilight, always a pleasure, and girls, I shall see you after I drop off this tray. The 5 ponies stared at the retreating Doomslayer until he was out of sight. After a moment, Rainbow spoke. Okay, I just wanna make sure we're all on the same page. This guy dresses like he's from Tartarus, talks like he went to charm school with Rarity, is powerful enough to kill 16 dragons at once, and he just lectured me on being more considerate. Twilight nodded. That about sums it up, she replied. And that makes sense to Everpony? Rainbow asked, incredulous. Not even remotely, Twilight stated as she was forced to concede that when it came to Darren Grandel, all she knew was that she knew nothing.